Thanks again for joining us today for another edition of SPINcast. Today we have CJ Collins, who is a part owner of both the Charlotte Phoenix as well as Charlotte Esports. CJ and I actually go back a little bit, so I have the privilege of knowing a little bit more about CJ besides the business side of things on a personal level as well. And I think he'll be able to provide you a little bit of pretty good insight in respect to not just esports, but who he is, who the Phoenix are, and kind of go from there. But without further ado, first off, let me thank you, CJ, for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. You got it. Hey, I am already getting some chippiness on the internet. Let me do this. I'm going to try to switch over. Hold on a sec.
Sure.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us today with another edition of SPINcast. Today we have CJ Collins joining us, who is part owner of both Charlotte Esports and the Charlotte Phoenix. I've actually had the privilege of knowing CJ for a little bit now in respect to not just the esports scene, but obviously on a personal level as well. He's incredibly informed onto what's going on in this area, as well as I'm sure he'll be able to give us some pretty good ideas as to what to expect within the scene and kind of what's kind of coming up down the road as well. So without further ado, I want to first say thank you, CJ, for joining us today. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, why don't you tell us and the audience a little bit more about who you are, how you got into the scene a little bit, and what you currently do.
Sure.
Please.
Yeah, so it all started when I was in high school and I was the president of the gaming club. And that looked very, very different 15 years ago than it does today. We scrounged every little thing we could from Xboxes to Nintendo 64s and played Mario Kart and Halo. At that time, I kind of transitioned from Halo, which was really, really competitive and kind of like, the first to market from an online esports competition from a console perspective. I know Quake was before that on PC, but Halo is very much like the first connection I ever had to competitive esports, and it entered the home in a really, really awesome way at the time. And then I transferred over to Call of Duty, where I played not super professionally, definitely didn't win a ton of money, but I won a little bit of money enough to be like, hey, Mom, I won this money. And then ever since then, I've really been looking at the business side of esports. I wasn't good enough to be a player, so I joined the Army at that time and kind of chased a career in the military. And then I helped build the Army esports program. So that's at 30,000 members, and I helped do some tryouts, some recruitment, a little bit of like how do we manage social media, how do we bring new recruits to the military. And then that was probably about 3 years ago. A year and a half ago, I met Josh Richardson, who's one of my business partners in the Charlotte Phoenix and CLT Esports. And we have been running hardcore ever since then.
Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the esports environment in general. Obviously, the way I see it, and I don't know nearly as much as you do, it's obviously grown tremendously over the years. There's a number of different platforms, games that are able to be played. There's the major titles and some just below that, things of that nature. But where do you see, or what would you see as the best thing that can happen in the esports space, say over the next 5 years, to maybe get that a little bit more centralized, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I actually think that's why we created CLT Esports. And it goes into a lot of the answer to that question. But I really think that in order to cater the growth of esports, there has to be a huge shift on education and what it looks like. Because there's just so many people that don't understand what esports is. Because it's very complicated. It's not something... I mean, me and you have talked for hours at this point, and I feel like there's still things where there's a lot of things that are left unknown. And it's just because I spent 15 years in this world, right? So learning, understanding, seeing how it works, seeing it develop, seeing, where it could go at the time. So it's like, how do we take that and turn it into a grassroots level, right? So the city of Charlotte, all right? And then how do we localize it even more? The county of Mecklenburg, right? It's like, how do we grab all the schools, all the parents, and all the right people to have a conversation on what esports is? And I feel like that's going to happen nationally, and kind of is in certain ways, right? Like
Right.
different pockets of people are doing things in Dallas and Atlanta and New York City, and we're in Charlotte, Florida, whatever. And that's kind of the direction it has to go over the next 5 years, so that we can teach parents, people in positions of power, in order to make decisions that influence esports in a positive way. Because right now it's very young. There's a lot of kids
Mm-hmm.
doing it,
Yep.
and I would actually put myself in that group. Like, I'm 30, and I'm probably older than the average player, but I'm not as old as some of the people who are making business decisions on how do we fund esports in different ways, right?
Right.
So that's part of it. How do we influence those pieces from a localized level?
Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit on the localized level. Let's talk
Yeah,
about middle school, high school, building up a foundation, if you will, right? Because
yeah,
I think it starts with education. Um, it is new. It's new not just to the parents, but to the students. And how do we go about this? There's a lot of talk of um, for kids that play online. Well, they're kind of secluded to a degree. It's just that one person in that room playing against some other person in another room somewhere else. So the bravado is different. Just everything's a little bit different there. If you had it your way, how would that beginning of that foundation kind of look like to really try to get that younger generation to really understand, hey, this is probably the best way of going about this to
mm.
get into that next level?
Yeah. I think that if I look at it from purely a player standpoint and their standpoint, there's a lot of value in seeing the person you're playing. And that's something that's kind of overlooked, right? Because especially in like the world we're living in, COVID, right? Everything's Zoom and digital and all those things, right?
Right.
But there's an immense amount of value of sitting across from and looking at the person that you're playing at times, like being able to interact with them on some level. And I think that that changes the perspective of everyone else who's watching as well. Right. And this is something that traditional sports has always been, like when I'm playing volleyball, I can look at you right in the face after I did my thing. Right.
Yep.
Or vice versa. Right. And that changes the dynamics of that whole game drastically. And it's the
Sure.
same with esports. Right. Because I can say something to you over the internet, whether positive or negative or whatever. But it's very different once I'm actually in the same room as you, and people act differently too.
Yeah.
I've seen players that are really, really, really good at home online in their own room come to a LAN event where they're sitting across from the people they're playing and completely fall apart and play like, terrible because of the nerves and the different environment and the non-comfort of being at home. And those are factors into coming and to be how do you grow that player up and those kind of things too.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I think that factors into a lot of core elements of traditional sports, such as sportsmanship, right? Such as
Yeah.
having a respect for the game, having an understanding that, you know what, it's really about the team as opposed to it's all me. I think all of those things factor in when you have that environment where you can play together or face to face versus online. So hopefully a number of the schools will take that and adopt some of those things, because I think fundamentally, if it's done properly from the beginning, just from a competitive nature, sports wise, it would make a much, much better product.
Yeah, sure. Just to add on to that, one of the
Mhm.
things that I've seen missing from a lot of streams that I've been watching that kind of has that human element to it.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have cams, like webcams or face cams, and I feel like there's a huge element that's like missing from like just the online stuff, of like more webcams and more players doing things, because
Yeah.
it's just another level of interaction that kind of brings into that whole environment that you're looking for.
Yeah. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Talk about for a second some of the real positive things that maybe you've seen over the years, whether it's for you personally or maybe for people that you've seen come up through esports, that this
Yeah.
was almost like a game changer possibly for them, and why?
What I found really, really quickly as I was going to events as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, I made a lot of friends. And I had, I'm a pretty social guy to begin with, but like I made friends that were like clearly really, really quiet people that wouldn't normally interact in a social environment, and they'd hang out with me at, in a LAN environment. And like, I'm talking to everybody. I want to shake everybody's hand and meet them and see what they do and all that stuff.
Yep.
And so like, I think for me, it was like, I kind of gathered a group of friends that was a little bit quieter, maybe not as loud as, exuberant as me. And I was able to kind of foster them into friend groups. And that's like friend groups where like I can poke in and say hi to those guys now, and it's been 10 years, since I met them. And like that's a huge positive thing of like I can stay connected with those folks. I've had relationships, I've won with them, I've lost with them, I've cried, I've cheered, I've done all those things with them. I've ate dinner with them, met their families. And it's so crazy that like in a world where maybe I would have only been in my little circle of like my church friend group or my high school friend group, like I get to totally be outside of that and meet new people that I would have never met because of this common hobby that we have.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think, again, that kind of blends back to being able to meet them in person, right? Whether it be at a LAN event or, let's say, a competitive event where you're face to face. Because the reality is, for a lot of people that are heavy into gaming, for a number of those, they're introverted to a degree, where that's
Sure.
their easiest way for a social outlet because they're a little bit more uncomfortable with that face to face dynamic. But because of that commonality, everything opens up, and now you've got topics that you can talk about in common, and that opens up to other topics. Now all of a sudden it goes from gaming to, hey, did you see this movie, or did you read this book, or did you watch this TV show, or do you like to eat this? Things that everyone has in common. So I definitely hope, again, that foundation piece, if it's built properly, will be pretty special for a lot of people that are in this space. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit. I know you guys do quite a bit with LAN events and do a number of things within the community there. What is your next thing coming up? Obviously, with the COVID-19, not many people can get face-to-face, but what are some of the projects you have in the works?
So we've been focusing a lot on online tournaments. I love Valorant. I think the new game Valorant, I'd like to invest heavy into, how do I create, a Charlotte scene of players, that all love that game. Cause they're here, they exist. So online tournaments, we're running Valorant like next Friday. We have a $500 guaranteed tournament, and then Rocket League. We do a Sunday night Rocket League. And I know you guys do something similar, right? You do Tuesday nights.
Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Turbo Tuesday.
Turbo Tuesday. There you go. You have a better name. Mine doesn't have a name. It's just Rocket League Sunday.
It works.
But yeah, I would love to get to a point where every night in the Discord, there's a group of players playing a specific game, whether it's League of Legends or COD or whatever. And eventually that would transition into something similar to where we have some kind of facility or place where the public, the general public, can go and just play any given tournament or any given event on any, at night, as after they get off work, and just like going to volleyball intramural or baseball intramural, at the parks local to Charlotte, like you're going to the, the Call of Duty tournament every Tuesday night at, whatever location that we have set up. So I think that's a big investment for us. I think the school systems are a big investment for us. And so like, how do we grow their esports programs from an academic standpoint? So how do we grow the careers that support esports, from developers, social media managers, video editors, logistics persons like myself that are good at like problem solving and creating events and those kind of things. And then on the other side, the team side of things, right? How do we create, esports teams for the high schools so that they can compete against each other? I think that's a huge goal for us. And I know we're actually aligned on that goal in a lot of ways. How do we grow these programs up? And it's a huge undertaking to do that. I mean, you and I both know that, like, that is not, a 20-minute conversation and go, right? That is like, that could be a full-time job for anybody. With 20 staff on, I still think you could, with the amount of moving pieces you need in order to make that work, it's really, really challenging. And I think that, those are two big undertakings that we're looking at right now. My third, which I think would be the most amazing thing ever, I want to bring a yearly convention to Charlotte that's esports related, right? So get the big developers, Activision Blizzards, the Epic Games, the Ubisofts. Hey, come run a championship here, and then we're going to run side tournaments along your championship so that we can cross-pollinate. So we run a League of Legends with the Fortnite, with the Call of Duty, along with, some kind of world championship for Valorant at the same time. And so we can cross-pollinate those audiences and get people that are all about esports together in one place. And we can do a lot once we've captured that audience for the city.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about some fantastic ideas there. I'm hopeful that a lot of those, if not all of them, do come to fruition. So I think we do align very well with some of the things we are looking to accomplish, especially for me at the grade level, and kind of go from there.
Yeah.
So what do you see as some of the biggest issues facing esports as an industry today?
The one that's on the forefront of my mind, I think there's a lot. I think we can unpack that in like a number of different areas.
Hmm.
But I think that the biggest thing that I'm actually struggling with, and trying to get other people to understand is like the amount and the scale of the programs that are used from just Discord, like getting people in Discord and utilizing Discord. I don't realize, and this, like, I've always used Discord since the day it came out, right?
Hmm.
Not everybody does that, not
Right.
even little kids, that are 13, 14 high schoolers, college kids, some of them haven't even heard of Discord, right? So it's relatively new. So like, and that's just one piece of technology that people use to connect. So like getting people to understand how to use those pieces of technology and kind of having the patience, because it's kind of one person at a time, right? Like I
Yeah.
bring you on a Discord, I teach you how to use it, and then you're able to use it, and then you bring another person on. So like
Yeah.
that kind of slow trickle effect is happening, and we're seeing it due to the growth of our Discord and the social media channels we have, right? But
Hmm.
like that is one little piece, and it's a bigger conversation. It's not just Discord. It's like, how
Sure.
do I download XYZ game, get into the game and play it and enjoy the social aspects that come from that? That's kind of challenging for some people.
Yeah.
And
No doubt.
I would say an overall, it's like a majority of people, not like a minority. It would be like 70% of people kind of struggle to get to that point.
Yeah.
And they need someone to help them get there. And so I guess that's like one thing right now where I'm like, how do I bridge the gap with technology for people?
Yeah, I think that comes back to education again, right? Again, but building that through the foundations, just kind of understanding, hey, these are all the interconnected pieces, and this is how you use that, and that technology will allow you to do so much more once you understand it. And back in my day, there wasn't really cell phones. I mean, that's probably all you
Yeah,
know. So learning how to use that was a little scary at first. Where now, it's the most commonplace thing in the. It's kids don't even know what a regular landline is.
sure.
So
Yeah.
it's definitely just a educational process, I think, in that respect.
Sure. And some of it is money, like
Mhm.
there's just a huge gap. Like owning a PC is very expensive, right? Like not everybody owns one.
Right, right. There's certainly different pockets within the community that they'll look at you like an alien with two heads if you were to say, "Yeah, jump on Discord, we can chat." They'll say, they'll unplug a
What?
cord and be like, "Discord." Um,
I've
so,
not heard that one before. That was
and
awesome.
and there you go. There you go. Um, so, last question for you. We'll kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, sure.
If you could be in this day and age, 2020, and you were
Yeah.
back in middle school or high school just starting out,
Oh,
based on
gosh.
what you know, based on, let's say you had all that education, everything you currently know, you can bring back there with you. What would you do
Mhm.
different and why?
I would have started pushing content sooner. I would have started capturing and documenting my entire life so that I could be able to kind of show the story, and be able to do that. And that's always like something that, as we sit around as a team, even in the year and a half we've been at CLT Esports, is like we didn't document enough. We need to document more because there's a story to be told there, and that's a huge piece of it. That's what I would do from like an actionable item that I didn't do more of. I think just I would also have been more patient. I think that patience is just so having patience is so valuable and so important. And I think that I was never patient enough with everyone around me. And I'm always like the fastest guy to do something, and kind of sometimes thinking about stuff is an afterthought. I just want to
Hmm.
go and do it and get my hands dirty with it and see what happens. So I would definitely wish I had more patience in certain moments, with teammates, with players, and then with like just my overall my ambitions and what I wanted to do and how quickly I did it.
Yeah, gotcha, gotcha. Content. Let's go back to that. Just kind of
Yeah,
dovetailing off of that. Content's king, right?
it is.
Nowadays, content is absolutely king. So great advice for anybody who's watching this. Hey, get some content, talk about things. Everyone has a little bit of a story to tell. Everyone's a little bit different. Some are more entertaining, some aren't as much, but everyone has one at the end of the day. So that's fantastic. So, anything else? Any last words from you?
No, I love having these talks about esports and conversations. I'd love to, whatever you have next and whatever piece of content we can make. I'm happy to be a part of it. But
Absolutely.
I'm excited to be on this journey with you, man. I think it's awesome that we're going to partner on a lot of different opportunities coming up here in the future, and I'm excited for it. It's going to be really good. We're going to do a
Well,
lot of things.
content. We get from now to 5 years from now. Let's see how this space grows and continue to go with that. But next time, I definitely would want to touch base. Is obviously I'd like to see what's going on with that YTAC program that I know is an initiative here in Charlotte. Would love to
Yeah.
see how those students start gearing up for and start doing with that. And certainly want to have you back on to kind of give us some recaps on that, because I think that's just a phenomenal program, and we can educate the masses to it, once it's up and going. So anyway,
Definitely.
CJ, definitely appreciate your time, man. Every single time is a good conversation. Hope you stay safe, continue to do well, and hopefully we'll be able to meet in person sooner than later. So,
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. I always look forward to these conversations. So
all right.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bud. Have a great day. We'll appreciate it.